Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Full Press Hockey Weekly Show. You can find it at Full Press NHL on Twitter, fullpresscoverage.com, fullpresshockey.com. Get it iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Twitch, we're on YouTube. I am your host, Jim Berenger, voice of Full Press Hockey, one of the hardest guys working in the room, along with this man, my co-host, Chris Wassel. What is up?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have reached the approved final destination for this year.
Should we say get your trade tables and seats up in their upright position as we make a land in Vegas for game one of the Stanley Cup final? As it is set, it's finally set. It feels like the Panthers haven't played in months. But the Vegas Golden Knights will battle the Florida Panthers in the Stanley Cup final. We will have a first-time winner. Both teams' second trip to the Stanley Cup final. Vegas in their inaugural year, which I think nobody wanted and nobody liked, hence why everybody rooted for Washington to win in 2018, the last time we would have a first-time winner between two teams that have never won the Cup. Now, Florida back, first time since 1996. I think people will be okay with either team winning, but it feels like this is Vegas's year for some reason.
Yeah, there is like this sort of nagging feeling like, something's like, and yet you could say the same about Florida too. It's why it's kind of an even series when you look at it, especially ironically with how Vegas is looking at it from the book side of things. Pretty close, which
yeah, Vegas is a slight favorite, slight, but it's funny because again, I'll have it up, shameless plug, but I'll have the preview up this week. Also, the betting previews will be up as well. But if you think about it, you go back to each series for the Vegas Golden Knights. Let's start in the Western Conference. If you look at it, they're probably one of the more underappreciated and under the radar number one seeds in the playoffs, right? Like people pick Winnipeg against Vegas, Connor Hellebuck, that's fine. Edmonton, they picked because, what they did during the regular season, McDavid and Draisaitl. Vegas wins. There were people that picked Dallas to be Vegas. I was not one of them. I know you weren't either.
Yep.
Because I felt Vegas was the more complete team. And I was like, well, look what they just did to Edmonton. They just beat the two best players in the world. And they did it defensively. So I think they can do it to Dallas. And I feel like Vegas is the better team against Florida. Despite the goaltending edge going to Florida, I just feel like Vegas is the better team.
Yeah, it's weird. Like balance-wise, Vegas probably has more that way, but here's where it gets weird. Now, Vegas can be a little hit or miss too. If you look at some of their numbers, they're averaging right around 4.25 goals a game in their wins. But in their losses, it's a little dicey there. I mean, they're averaging just over 1.5 goals, which, normally you wouldn't make a big deal out of it. But, there's that. And then there's obviously part two of all this, Jim. And that, of course, is they got to stay out of the penalty box. I mean, look, let's be honest. One of the reasons why Vegas's penalty kill is so skewed and it seems like it's so bad is because they take so few penalties. That's something that has to be kept in mind. They take 5 minutes a game less in penalties than the Florida Panthers.
This is true. They do. And that was a big reason, and that changed in the Edmonton series because they were taking a lot of penalties early on in that series. And they cut it back down because you knew, the Edmonton power play was just like automatic. And then when they stopped taking penalties, the Oilers power play didn't have a lot of chances to get back in the series or back in a game. And they did the same thing to Dallas too. Everybody thought, in game 6, what a blowout that game was. It wasn't even close, 6-0, and it was over in the first period. And you thought if Dallas maybe gets on the power play in the second period, maybe they have a chance to get back. No, Vegas is like, no, we're not taking it. But what I noticed and, watching these games is as the series goes on, the whistles tend to go away and we get used to the playoff hockey instead of the ticky-tack calls that we see
Yep.
in the playoffs, where you're like, really, we're calling this a penalty? And then we get to games 5 and 6, and those penalties are not penalties anymore. It's hockey. And
Hmm.
I think Florida with their power play, they were able to adjust against Carolina. And let's give some credit to Florida here. I mean, they have a great aggressive forecheck. That forecheck took out two good defensive teams. Sorry, Ian, earmuffs. They caused the Bruins to make mistakes in the first round to come back and down 3-1. I mean, look, think about it. If
John on the bench.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. I mean, we'll get to that question in a minute. But in overtime, Omar plays the puck, but there's no pressure. He doesn't know where the pressure's coming from. Coughs it up, bang in the net. Overtime, Kachuk. And later on in the series, the Bruins defense are giving up uncharacteristic mistakes, similar to what we saw against Carolina. That forecheck, Brent Burns in the quadruple overtime game.
Yep.
Had shot up the boards, goes to Kachuk, bang in the net. I mean, they're able to create turnovers against very good defensive teams. Now, obviously, the Leafs they're not a great defensive team, but they're okay one, and they were forcing them into bad turnovers that ended up in the back of their net. The problem is Vegas doesn't do that, a lot of it, and Vegas takes away the middle of the ice. And they did it against Dallas. They did it against Winnipeg. They did it
Yep.
against Edmonton. And they're big and they're physical. You hear it over and over again. You read it. Kelly McCrimmon, after the bubble, made it his mission. He had 2 goals: get a number 1 center, get a number 1 defenseman. He did it both. Jack Eichel and Alex Pietrangelo, and that defense is big and it's physical and it's hard to play against.
I wish I could blow this up a little bit better, but thanks to quite a few people. But for one, the guys at Evolving Wild, or the Twins, as we like to call them, a couple places did this. So doing about like 4 or 5 like average tail of the tapes for the two teams, and this is about what we came up with. Vegas comes in man to man, average height 6'2". Wait, here you go. Wait, 203.6. Now remember, that's forwards and defensemen.
Wow.
So you figure up and down, that is quite impressive. Now here's the thing. Florida is a lighter skating team. People don't think this, but it actually is true. Now Florida, right around the same height, inch shorter to a man, but 10.5 pounds lighter on average.
If you go,
this is where if you're Florida, you have to strike early.
Yeah,
you have to strike early in the series.
You do, but Vegas has shown that they can come back down 1-0, down 2-0. They did it to Dallas.
True.
I mean, Dallas. Look, you go back to game 2. Dallas was in complete control of that game, and then 1 turnover because they coughed it up because Vegas continued to lock down the neutral zone despite being down a goal. Coughed it up, bang in the net, and then they win in overtime. I mean, if you think about it, Florida is in the Vegas role in 18 because they were a little lighter, a little faster, and Washington was a heavier team.
Yes. Washington probably was around, if I go back a little bit, probably around that 202 to 203 range average weight. They were big.
They were big and they were physical. And obviously, Holtby makes the save in game 2, and the rest, we know what the rest, the rest is history, and we have the summer of Ovi. But I just feel like Vegas is a better team top to bottom. They have more depth. And when you can start a 4th line, and let's give some credit to Bruce Cassidy. Think about the move he made. I was watching the Sportsnet. Feed because I was up in Vermont watching the games, as a little vacay up north. And, Gary Galley made a great point about how Bruce Cassidy moved Nicholas Waugh and Brett Howden, right? They switched He moved Wad down to the fourth line, moved Howden back up. Just that subtle switch, and he starts the fourth line. They get a tax time zone, score the opening goal, dominate Dallas, that's where I feel the Vegas Golden Knights are better than the Florida Panthers because they have more depth up front and they roll four lines and they just come in waves.
No, it's true. It's the one thing that Florida may not be able to cope with so well that they could in other against the first three teams that they've faced. To be honest, Boston had two lines essentially by then, or 1.5.
I think Stone's what? Stone at Brandon Braden. I believe Stone's on the second line. I believe he's on the second line with Stevenson, and then you have Marchessault with Eichel and Barbashev. I mean, it's the way they're rolling lines right now. I mean, look, the original Golden Misfits as six remaining members took care of business in the Western Conference Final for the Vegas Golden Knights. I mean, Riley Smith, William Carrier, Jonathan Marchessault, William Karlsson. They took care of business for the Golden Knights. I mean, look, Karlsson is done now. He's got 5 goals in elimination games, both in Game 6. He had a hat trick against the Oilers. He had 2 goals against Dallas. He's got 10 goals in the playoffs, and he's playing well right now, and he leads the team, and it's a franchise record in the playoffs. Marchessault's got 9 goals. Eichel leads the team. So, look, Vegas, I think, if you look at it, Vegas has got a nice depth to their team. They roll 4 lines. Bruce Cassidy's not afraid to start any line. Their power play is good. Their penalty kill is strong. And even the penalty kill with that trap and everything, they're able to slow down teams and just win puck battles. And I think Bruce Cassidy was not happy with the way his team played in games 4 and 5. And now you can see what that Vegas team is like. And Florida's gonna have to adjust, and they're gonna come out strong. The question is 10 plus days off too much time off? I know it's good to rest your body, but the problem is, ask the 2003 Anaheim Ducks, ask the 2007 Ottawa Senators. There's probably a couple other teams that had long time off between the start of the final and the end of the conference final, and it didn't bode well for them.
Yeah, I mean, this is where it gets fun too. I mean, but again, I will point out one thing and one thing only. Calgary's that's just mean. That's cruel and unusual punishment. I mean, the TNT darling known as Matthew Tkachuk will not let Florida go gently into the good night. And he is inevitably going to make an impact early in this series. By the way, first goal, Matthew Tkachuk plus 900 on Saturday. I'm just throwing it out there.
I mean, that's not bad odds. I mean, I think if anything, I would put money on one of the Golden Misfits to score.
I have that, and one of the other ones that I noticed, and it's heavy risk because Marchessault, as we all know, has 9 goals in the playoffs, but Vegas has hardly anything when it comes to the power play. Kind of do. Marchessault hit 2 crossbars and 2 posts in the Dallas series alone on the man advantage.
He's due. He's due for a power
play. That power
goal.
play goal is coming. So
that power play goal is coming.
Keep an eye on the number for that because Sports Interaction had it and then they pulled it, so it should be coming back. Just usually when they yank and pull things like that, it means that there's a shift or a sizable shift in numbers. So.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I look at it and, for me, the Florida power play, they were able to make adjustments. Give credit to Paul Maurice and his staff because they weren't getting much. Then they made a subtle adjustment, moved the puck quicker, got a couple power play goals, and Tkachuk, obviously. I mean, look, Matthew Tkachuk, look. What more can you say about this guy? Eastern Conference Final, scores 3 game-winning goals, 2 in overtime, 1 with 4.3 seconds left to send him to the final. Assisted on the Sam Reinhart goal. I mean, it's between him and Bobrovsky for Conn Smythe for the Panthers, and it seems like it flip-flops between a series or a game. Bobrovsky leads the way. Question for you.
Yeah.
All right. So everybody's comparing this run by Bobrovsky to Jaguar in 2003. Again, I'm not going to be bitter. I'm trying to be biased here. I still say 7 shutouts in the playoffs, 3 in the Stanley Cup final. Deserves Martin Brodeur Conn Smythe Trophy, but we won't go there. But they're saying, what Bobrovsky's doing is what Jaguar did in 03, and Jaguar won the Conn Smythe Trophy without winning the Stanley Cup. If it's a close series, if Bobrovsky plays well, is it his trophy to lose no matter what?
No, it's not. Because you have viable candidates. You have at least 2 viable candidates from Vegas, and you have obviously the other one in Florida in Tkachuk. So what if, say, the series goes 7 and Tkachuk goes ham and scores like 7 or 8 goals in the series, and he's the reason why it goes 7 in the first place. So
I mean,
there's that too.
I mean, could we see a losing member win it? Like,
It's
especially if it's Florida. Like, say Vegas wins in 7, but like you said, Tkachuk goes off. Is it possible that it goes to them?
It's possible. It really is, because look, I don't want to disrespect Vegas here, because what Vegas has done is pretty damn awesome. Here's the thing though. If you look just straight from betting numbers, Vegas is completely brushed aside at this point.
Yeah, they really are. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, you look at the way it's set up even. I mean, Adin Hill is plus 1,200 on DraftKings.
I saw him at plus 1333 on Sports Interaction.
Yeah, that's about right. I've seen anywhere from 12 to 14 or even 1,500 on some of the offshore sites. So it's not far off.
If he goes off in the final and keeps playing like this, dark horse.
Yeah, I mean, people have to consider this. It's like, am I going to sit there and toss $50 on Adin Hill to win the Conn Smythe? No. Am I going to toss like maybe $2, $3, $5 on it?
Yeah,
I might, because the numbers are good. I mean, look, for our Canadian friends, here we go. Tkachuk is plus 290 on most American sites. He's like 250 to 325, depending on where you go. But on Sports Interaction and a couple other Ontario betting sites, he's up in the 400 to 475 range. I'm just saying.
I mean, look, it's interesting because like Vegas is so deep. They've done it with so many different guys. I know Eichel leads the team in points, but Barbashev, I felt like, is a guy that should get consideration.
He should.
I mean, Carlson's got 10 goals. Marchessault's got 10 goals. Stevenson's played. It feels like it's a who's who on the Vegas side, and it's 2 guys for Florida. It really is.
It's crazy, right?
It's like a who's who on Vegas. It's like they've done it like as a team, and too bad you just can't give it the Conn Smythe Trophy to the team, because I feel like Vegas could be like the team that gets their name on the Conn Smythe Trophy because they're doing it as a team, and then there's Tkachuk and Bobrovsky on the other side.
It is weird. I mean, look, to be fair, I mean, Florida's had some, they produced. There's no question about it. And they've had some nice balance. But here's where it gets fun. So I started going down like the list for fun and giggles. So playoff scoring, right? Okay, so people are wondering, all right, so who's obviously scoring besides Tkachuk? And naturally, of course, it's about 6 million centers from Florida, and then drops off from there. Here's the goofy part. Quietly in the early rounds of the playoffs, Brandon Montour had quite a nice little run. I mean, I know the last round or two, it hasn't been so good offensively, but actually his defensive game has picked up, which means he's doing kind of his job. But he has 6 goals. Verhaeghe has 6 goals. Reinhardt has 7. But then it's like, yeah, you're right. It's like, weird, right? It is a lot. It is a good deal of balance, though.
Yeah,
but they're averaging probably, by rough math, they're averaging a good half a goal less than Vegas is. I think Florida's at about 3.13 a game by my rough math. But then again, they were averaging just about almost, 3.5, 4 against Boston. And then you had all those games that started hitting the under against Toronto. And then against Carolina especially. Well, except for game 4. But again, they haven't had to get into that sort of like high scoring pace that they were in for, say, March into April.
Yeah, I mean this feels like, I mean, the Carolina series was low score. I feel like there could be games where it could be low scoring, could be high scoring, just the way two teams play defense, and goals could be at a premium. The way Vegas block shots, and look, no, I mean, Hayden Hill's played great since he's come in against Edmonton. He's made the saves that he needs to make. He's made the timely saves, and the only bad goal he really gave up was because Alex Pietrangelo got a stick in the way on a Ty Dellandrea shot, and he might have stopped that one.
Yeah, he might have stopped that one. People, I mean, yeah, was he a little off position-wise? Yes. But was he economizing his position frequently? No. And that was the difference in the series. You could tell Aiden Hill did not play 81 games, regular season and playoffs, like Jake Ottinger.
And Ottinger admitted today he was hurt.
Yeah. So you knew something was up.
Yeah, considering he was giving up like 4 goals a game, I'm like, this isn't the Jake Ottinger from last year. Like, this guy was hurt, and Dallas confirmed it this year and today, and it's unfortunate, but that's the way that it goes. And look, Vegas was the better team. Look, I put it out on Twitter the other day, and I brought it up with Mick Kern, and I look. Jamie Benn was suspended for 2 games for the cross-check. It was the right amount of games. You can't do that, and he made it worse by what he said. The problem is the Dallas Stars played better without him in the lineup, but they also exhausted all their energy to get him back in the lineup, and they had nothing left for Game 6.
Yeah.
You could have made the case that Peter DeBoer could have pulled a Sheldon Keefe and kept him out of the lineup, similar to what they did with Bunting, and made him earn his way back because he was so ineffective. -2, only 12 minutes. I think I expected Ben to be more physical and play a better game. But then again, you go over the last couple of years, what we always say about the Stars. Why does Sagan and Ben always need a kick in the pants? It's like they always do.
Right.
And I think DeBoer made a mistake not starting him in Game 6. I think that was the biggest mistake.
Yep. Pretty much. I mean, there's pretty no other way around it. Ben shouldn't have played. Sagan should kept his minutes down like they had been. He was hurt. I mean, it was obvious.
Yeah. Ryan Suter shouldn't have been in the lineup.
Again, there were certain things that Dallas needed to do that they didn't have the luxury because they don't have the depth of a team like Vegas.
Right. And, you almost wonder, it's almost wondering because when Dallas made that run in 2020, who did they have on the blue line? Heiskanen, Klingberg, and Lindell.
Yeah, it's true. They just had. You couldn't get by them. Let's put it that way. You just couldn't
until they ran in Tampa.
But to be fair, I mean, look, Tampa was just relentless that year. They weren't going to lose.
No, that's true. They weren't. But look, we at least we had 6 games in the Western Conference Final. I mean, we have 4 close games in the Eastern Conference Final. I feel like we had like 5 close games because the 4 overtimes.
Upon further review.
Yeah, upon further review, I think it was 5 games.
Still the right call, but
Yeah, still, but still.
It would have saved us a few hours along the way.
Right, but still, I mean, but they were close games. I don't know if we could call them entertaining. The last maybe Game 4 was more entertaining than the others. The Vegas series was good, except for 2 games, and Game 3 and Game 6 were carbon copies of each other. And when Vegas wants to dominate a game, they're going to dominate.
Yep, it's absolutely true.
So look, the Stanley Cup Final starts June 3rd, Saturday. It should be a good one. It's going to be a fun one. To me, I think Vegas is a better team, and I think they're going to lift the cup as Bill Foley predicted.
Yep. The old. Do you sit there and toss maybe something fun out there? You go like because the numbers there. Do you toss a Florida in 6 for a few bucks just for the heck of it, just to get the outcome because you're maximizing your value? You might want to just in God forbid case. But the Vegas numbers, again, minus 130 for the series, I think it's minus 135 for game one, give or take. You can do a simple thing where you just go, hey, series outcome ends in 5 or 6. Series outcome in 6 is plus 205. Series
I mean,
outcome
that seems like what the average has been lately. So
yeah, you
and
kind of can roll with it, and you figure, look, for those, let's be honest. There is I believe, Jim, at least on DraftKings and FanDuel, there's a road game win prop as well.
I kind of hope if Vegas wins, they win it at home.
I do too, but I have this
Yeah, I have this feeling that it's going to be one on the road.
It just, we could be wrong, and to be honest, wouldn't shock me either way. But this series does have the feeling of going probably 6.
Yeah, at least 6. At least 6. But look, they're gonna drop the puck Saturday. It should be a good one. I think Vegas takes the opening game. Just because Florida's gonna need maybe Florida scores first like they did in '96, but I think Vegas is too strong, and I think they find a way to win game 1.
Cue up those Tom Fitzgerald references.
Yeah, you like that. But we could spend all day talking about the Stanley Cup Final because there's a lot we could dive into.
I know. We got news.
But we have a lot of news to talk about. A lot of news.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. It's a silly season. We got the coaching carousels. We got changes in Toronto. Sing the changes, Paul McCartney. Great changes, David Bowie. One of our viewers brought up a great question. What do we think about Toronto's new GM? Well, Toronto, quick backstory. We're going to hit around the horn. We're going to play it quickly. Quick backstory. Kyle Dubas was fired by the Toronto Maple Leafs a couple weeks ago on a Friday news dump by Brendan Shanahan because earlier in that week he wasn't sure if he was wanted to come back, but he said if it was going to be Toronto, it was Toronto or nothing, but he wasn't sure. He had talked to family. Meanwhile, we get this crazy press conference for Brendan Shanahan detailing everything that went on. Seems like Dubas wanted more money and power. The kind of things way went down on Thursday, even though he's on meetings on Wednesday. Kind of sketchy, just sending an email, agent comes back, yada, yada, yada. Okay. So they get rid of Kyle Dubas. Okay. Names come out around Toronto. Is it Bergevin? Could be Wilson. Seemed like from the beginning it was Brad Treliving. Brad Treliving made tough decisions. He was in Calgary for 9 years, down in Phoenix. He's been around. They want an experienced guy. I like the hire. You know why? Because he's been there before. He's been in the situation where he's had to make tough decisions. Look, everybody wants to say, oh, you let Johnny Gaudreau walk. Well, you know what? Up until the night before free agency began, Johnny Gaudreau was going to be a Calgary Flame.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. Like, Gaudreau dragged his feet. Now, maybe Treliving should have pushed him a little bit more earlier at the deadline and said, hey, you got to give me a decision here. Maybe he just didn't know. But the way he handled the Tkachuk situation, when Tkachuk's like, yeah, I want out. I'm not coming back. I'm not resigning. He got a great return for Tkachuk from Florida with Huberdeau and Weegar. And let's be honest, Huberdeau and Weegar are going to have bounce back years for Calgary. I think that team's going to have a bounce back year with Craig Conroy as the GM. I know they have tough decisions as well, but if they get that right coach in there, maybe like a Travis Green type, they're going to take off because no offensive player was going to succeed in that system under Darryl Sutter. But I like what Treliving's done. He's brought in, I heard Dave Poulin make a great point. When he has a vision, he tells the players what the vision is. He can sell the players on the vision, and the players will sign. Look at the guys that he brought in. Jacob Markstrom, Nazem Kadri. I mean, he's got big free agents to sign in Calgary where it's, not a lot of guys want to go to Calgary. He's pulled off some good trades. He's got great returns. He knows how to draft and develop players. I think this is what Toronto needs.
Oh, you mean like going back to basic building blocks and assembling a team, an actual team?
The right way.
Oh yeah.
And I don't like and I think the focus is going to become more and more on Shanahan and the accountability, because if the reports are true that you could call your players like the core four and say you're not getting moved, you can't say that to players. You know why? Because anybody's movable. Okay? Anybody's movable. And I think Matthews are going to resign, but
Yep.
I think Nylander, Marner, Tavares. I know Tavares is your captain, and he's probably going to get moved to the wing, but they can figure out a way to. It's a difficult conversation, but Tampa had that difficult conversation with Ryan McDonough.
Yep.
So I think Trey Living's a good hire. Now, did Shanahan pick the brain of Mark Bergevin? Probably. If they had a 3-hour Zoom call, I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, something was going on.
Something was going on. So, but I like to hire.
Yeah, and it's a hire under tough circumstances that needed to be made. It's that simple. Now, here's the other thing too, Jim. Does Sheldon Keefe stay? Reports say it's inching more likely to a yes. But as we know, with news and how certain things have traveled, particularly Monday, which we got something of a leak a full day before it actually happened. Oops. Thank you, Weeksy. Or thank you for confirming what we knew for months.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute.
But the thing is, you look at Toronto and how they're constructed. They're close. There is no doubt that they are close. But again, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, Jim.
Yeah, it does. It does it's only close in those two sports. And close in tennis, I guess, because if you can paint a line, it's in, right? But the problem is,
hold on. Let me call Medvedev. Wait. What? You're
Hawkeye.
outside.
Yeah, where's Hawkeye?
Right.
No, but if you look at it, and again, shameless plug, NHLRumors.com. Mark Easton does a great job. We all do, both of us. But if you look at it, the Maple Leafs have a salary cap problem. They still need to sign bottom six guys. They got to figure out who's coming back, and you got to relieve some cap space. They have a lot of issues that they have to look at, and telling your core four that they're all coming back and they're not going anywhere. No, Lou never did that. A lot of GMs don't do it. Guys will say, hey, we're going to try to keep you, but if a deal comes up where we can move you and get something for you, it may happen.
Okay, so perfectly timed. Thank you, Braden.
Thank you, Braden.
Okay, so outside of the Big Four in Toronto, what do you think Mr. Trey Living does next year at goalie? Well, obviously Samsonov has got to stay. That's kind of.
Wall is probably going to be the backup.
Well, he'll be the backup, so you have to come up with something for maybe a plan C, because it is Toronto.
But the issue is you have Matt Murray. Can you move that contract because he's paid $8 million in real money?
You're going to have to find somebody. You're going to have to find a dance partner somewhere and eat something, because you can't have any kind of flexibility without making that move. The problem is everybody knows that you need to make that move to have any kind of flexibility.
Right. And are you going to put yourself in another Patrick Marleau situation where you give up a first-round draft pick that turns into a good player?
Yeah. I mean, how many years can you do that if you're in Toronto?
Right. Again, you have to sign bottom six guys. Matthew Knies, we know, is probably going to play top six, but again, comes down to Nylander, Marner, and Tavares. At some point, you might be able to move $11 million and maybe figure out a way to have to keep something on the books. He could still score. He's a winger. He's good on the power play. Somebody might want him.
Hey, team looking for a little power play front presence.
I mean, reunion, Long Island,
For a lower rate, yeah.
maybe.
It's
Maybe.
pot. Look, it's not it. Nothing is far fetched when it comes to this because obviously you're going to be getting a guy like Tavares at a discounted rate.
Yeah.
And look at how many years are left on that contract at a discounted rate.
Well, it's only 2.
Still, it's more than 1.
Right, but it's better than 3 or 4.
Exactly. So you're not. Let's put it this way: any team that would do something like this doesn't get so far hamstrung, even at a discounted rate.
No,
because it's only 2 years.
And if they still have buyouts, then maybe they buy it out. Again, a lot of factors into that, but they have to figure out a way to open up cap space. And Murray and Tavares right now are the 2 guys. If I'm the general manager, I'm looking at it and be like, all right, these are the guys that I can open up cap space with and upgrade my defense, upgrade my goaltending, figure out how to sign some bottom 6 forwards, and like just keep things going because look. If Sheldon Keefe comes back, it's going to be like one of those weird things like we see in like the NFL where the GM gets fired, but the coach stays, and then the coach gets fired the next year. Doesn't make sense. And we've seen coaches get fired. I mean, look,
we've seen that before.
I mean, look, we've saw it last year. They waited sometimes till August to make decisions. Like it can happen. I mean, I don't think just Sheldon unless I'll say this. I'll believe Sheldon Keefe's the coach when the puck drops in October for Toronto and he's behind the bench. Until then, anything can happen. And, Travis Green's name's out there, Peter Laviolette, I mean, I think Sheldon Keefe's a good coach. I really do. But I don't know if he's the guy that gets them over the edge.
No, and that's fair. We really don't know. And part of that is because, look, Toronto's in a fishbowl.
Right.
Doesn't help the division they're in, and it doesn't help who they wind up playing against.
No, it's a very tough division. I mean, it's very, very tough because Ottawa's only getting better. Buffalo's getting better. Tampa's still Tampa. Florida. List goes on of teams. Obviously, the rivals, Montreal. So, but, quick hit on Calgary. Craig Conroy's the new GM there, taking over for Brad Treliving. It's going to be interesting. I want to, because with one more thing on Treliving, I want to know if he's able to do the draft because technically the Flames said they were going to keep him under contract till June 30th.
There must been some kind of under nudge wink deal where he is allowed to in some way.
Right.
So there's probably something we don't know about, something changed hands, like some future considerations of some wacky sort.
Yeah, exactly.
That will never see the light of day.
Never.
Until we're like 80-something years old and they'll be like, oh yeah, remember that 2023 when Treliving became GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs and there was this deal and it's like for like a case of God knows vintage bourbon or something
right.
crazy.
So you have Craig Conroy's hired in Calgary. I think it's a great hire. I think they wanted him all along. He's been there. He knows what he has to get done and he knows what he has to do. That's gonna be a win-win for Calgary. And I think he's gonna be able to keep the guys that were gonna be free agents and do everything the right way. And then Pittsburgh, I mean, who knows what's going on there? I mean, it was Kyle Dubas and then maybe not. Who knows? I mean, and Pittsburgh's like Toronto, right? If you think about it, Pittsburgh's got cap space issues.
Worse.
They have to make tough decisions, and it all starts because ownership wanted to keep the band back together, and Hextall wanted to make a tough decision. So if I'm Kyle Dubas, do I really want to go to that mess, or am I waiting for Ottawa because of a sale? Who knows? I mean, just so many questions there. And then on the coaching side of things, Spencer Carberry was hired in Washington, it's a great hire. I mean, look, he's had history with the team, Hershey Bears, AHL coach, so it makes sense. Note on Calgary, if it isn't Gallant, I think they go with their AHL coach.
I think the AHL coach is the right move, without a
Just
doubt.
2-time coach of the year. I think that's the right play.
Makes
But
too much sense. He knows the players.
right, exactly. And he knows the young players on the team. So I think that makes sense. So in Nashville, our buddy, John Hines, was relieved of his duties, was fired. And Andrew Burnett, who did a good job in New Jersey, and he did a great job in Florida as a new head coach in Nashville. Nashville's roster's got issues too. And I think, but Bruno can get what he can get out of that team. Hopefully he gets the power play going. It's a good move. And now all of a sudden, John Hines' name is coming up in New York, even though it was Peter Laviolette's job, maybe. Yes, no.
Possibly close.
I think if it was Laviolette, the decision would have been made by now. I think it would have come out yesterday because I agree with Elliot on that. I think if it was Laviolette, it would have been done by now. The fact that they're looking at John Hines now or maybe waiting on Sheldon Keefe or something. Look, I will go back to the day that Jeff Gordon and John Davidson were fired or relieved of their duties by the Rangers. I thought it was a stupid decision then. I will find the video. I will find the audio. I have it. I know it's somewhere out in the world. It is there. I didn't agree with it. I will say it was 100% on James Dolan. I know for a fact that he has Glenn Sather still in his ear, even though Sather is not in a general manager's role or anything like that. He still listens to him. It is on Chris Drury and it is on James Dolan for what the Rangers are going through. Look, the Rangers made it to the bubble in 2020 because it got expanded. The playoffs got expanded for TV. I don't want to hear about if it was not the Rangers, Chicago, and Montreal in those positions, that does not get expanded. I'm sorry. It just doesn't. And I will stick to it despite I have friends in LA. I have people I've had on podcasts that disagree with me. We'll agree to disagree, but I will stand with my belief there. The year after, they didn't make the playoffs, but they were improving, and they just missed out. Then they go to the Eastern Conference Final, they get a new coach, they change everything, but they were doing things the right way. Now I feel like they're getting too aggressive and trying to make up for mistakes, and now letting Gordon and Davidson go when they came out with a plan that said this is how long it's going to take. And Drury, even in his initial press conference, said we're still following this plan. Feels like they're throwing the plan out the window because now we're trying to make up for things that happened in the first round. So if we're going to go to John Hines, why didn't we just keep Gerard Gallant?
It's the great $64 question here. Why make a change in the first place? Yeah, why make a change? I mean, was there something in the locker room?
Probably,
but is that on your players? Yeah.
Was there a problem between Drury and Gallant? Yeah.
Of course there was. We all know that. The other problems are well, let's call it for what it is. You have a team full of homophobic, racist morons who can't get out of their own way. And by the way, one of the worst places in New Jersey to go. Well, I'm sorry, one of the best places to eat a hoagie, Talercio's, has the most obnoxious Rangers fan. I'm just saying. All joking aside, the biggest problems with the Rangers are themselves.
Yeah, because they have young talent that they're not are not utilizing right. I don't think John Hines is going to help that because the Nashville Predators will let Ellie Tolvanen go.
And somebody had mentioned that in Nashville as one of the main reasons why ultimately Hines was going to get fired. Now, mind you, this was back in April. This was back at before the regular season ended, before even Nashville went on that run with the host of AHL players. As I was told by somebody in a nice, cushy, better job than I could ever dream of, office chair, Hines was going to take the axe eventually, no matter what. And at the time, you dismiss it off because it's like, well, this team has a load of injuries. What do you expect? This, that, whatever. And then it started to make sense. It's like, well, Jesus Christmas. This team's really unhappy. They're playing unhappy. You get guys coming up from Milwaukee and all of a sudden there's new life. Something didn't quite mesh right there, where you basically had half a team playing in spite of the coach.
Right. And
You
and
really
let's
did.
and let's be honest. Look, I understand what he did his first year in New Jersey. Taylor Hall goes off. The Devils make the playoffs, but after that, he really, I mean, look, he was okay in New Jersey, and he wasn't great in Nashville either. Like, they didn't do, they didn't
They're
accomplish a
mediocre.
lot. They were mediocre. They were in the murky middle. Like, they remain in the murky middle. That's the phrase everybody likes to call it, the murky middle. You
It's
can't
scary.
do anything. You can't do anything if you're in 17 through like 21. Like, you can't do anything, and like, you just can't.
Yep.
And Nashville was there. And the problem is yeah, the 1 year that they got to the playoffs and they got swept by Colorado, is because guys like Duchesne and Johansson and Yossi and Forsberg all went off. Now Forsberg has been,
Yeah.
whatever. Forsberg's been their best player since he's come over from Washington years ago. But you knew Yossi, Duchesne, and Johansson were not going to have career years again.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
And I agree.
this is tough.
And Braden again. I mean, perfect timing. I mean, yeah, I think everybody was stunned. And I think people will be stunned too, because I know Drury knows Hines. I know they're buddies, all that stuff. But you're telling me, look, I know everybody's tired of the recycling of coaches and all this stuff, but I would take Peter Laviolette over John Hines, because Peter Laviolette's been to 2 Stanley Cup finals. He's won a Stanley Cup with Colorado. He took the Nashville Predators to Stanley Cup final in 2017.
Yeah.
He can get the job done. Did it work in Washington? There were some years they probably should have got it out of the first round. The year against Florida they lost, they probably should have got out of the first round. Thought he did a decent job in Washington.
Yeah, this year was probably his death nail, sadly.
Yeah, unfortunately,
because they were in a playoff spot, and then players started coming back, and things got just invariably worse.
Right.
Partially because he was sticking with his veteran guys, which a veteran coach would do normally.
But their veteran guys were hurt for most of the year,
Yep.
and they weren't 100%.
Right. And let's face it, Nicholas Backstrom is done.
Yeah, 100%.
It's sad.
It's sad.
It was painful to watch. Anybody that's
sad.
a Washington fan, or anybody that's an NHL fan in general, that was painful.
Right. And we hope the same can't be said about Gabriel Landeskog in Colorado, because he's such a great player to watch. But again, Colorado, I think, I think
if any guy can pull this off, Jim,
it's him.
It's him.
But he's gonna have a long recovery.
I have to thank Mary Pam immensely for this, because he was able to talk to Mark Mito extensively about this, because he had the same surgery. The difference was he had it at 34, at the tail end of his career, more or less, as he put it. He was trying to hang on, hope for the best. Landeskog at least is, it's, he's at 30. Yeah, he does have a lot of mileage. I get that. But you can't underestimate the things that Landeskog tried to do just to get back this year.
And by the way, probably should have put him on LTIR before the trade deadline, so they could have gotten somebody. And now they're going to have to get somebody to do it. And obviously,
year.
But at least come when the rosters have to be done, you can put them there, and then you'll be under the cap, and you'll get somebody, and yada yada yada. What I found interesting today, and the coaching carousel, obviously, we don't know what is going on in Anaheim. Maybe if Green doesn't get hired someplace else, he'd be a good fit there with that team. I think that team's got great. What I found interesting today, I was scrolling through Twitter, and as we close with this, we've mentioned Carolina on here many a time, and we've mentioned Carolina and the ownership, and we've mentioned how, they don't want to spend a lot of money. And I found it interesting that they said they wanted to get bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Don Waddell said he's not sure if Max Pacioretty is going to return to action, which again is tough because of the 2 Achilles. But they know that they need to address offense because it got exposed, and it did. The fact that they didn't have Svechnikov, the fact that there was no Pacioretty,
Yeah.
They didn't do anything at the trade deadline to get that. Yes, Yarvi was not the answer. So I think they do that. I think they're gonna have to finally spend some money. And they're gonna have to finally spend some money, with one of their free agent goaltenders, with Anderson or Ronta, pick one, because you're gonna have to bring one of them back, and you're gonna have to pay.
No, it's true. The argument is, all right, which, is Anderson too old to go on a deep run?
I don't know. He
We
showed
don't
he
we
could,
we don't know. I mean, again, this is a guy that cracked a few times in Anaheim.
but he also played
That
very well for Carolina.
and there's your dilemma. It's like, what happens, and you don't want to call it like a redemption arc, but in a sense, look, Anderson was rather good in the playoffs, aside from maybe one or two games, Jim. And
Yeah,
even
I mean,
then,
outside of games he got lit up. Outside of the games that he got lit up against New Jersey, I mean, and I thought he played fine. I thought Ronta was good too. I mean, again, Carolina ran it when Carolina played good goaltender and good defense. They could
mm-hmm.
New Jersey. That says on New Jersey's defense
Yeah.
and goaltending than it says about Carolina as offense. But they did score.
Right.
They have to figure out how they're going to get more offense because they need to.
Yeah, you have to get consistent. And here's something. Miss maybe a little bit more sobering for Carolina. They have to figure out deep in playoff runs how to cultivate their penalty kill.
Yeah.
Because what they were doing was not working.
No.
At all in the final two, in the second round it was starting to go a little south, even against New Jersey. You could see the chances, even though they weren't being converted, you could see the opportunities that New Jersey was getting. They were slowly exposing Carolina, and Florida just said, oh, look at that. Oh, we'll do that. Yep, they made a couple adjustments, and legitimately, I will say this: Sebastian Aho is not a good first penalty kill center.
No,
in this league.
No, he's not.
He just isn't. A second tier guy, yeah. First, no. And Florida exploited that throughout the 4 games.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's going to be interesting to see what Carolina does, and I think they're going to have to do something. But it's that time of year. It's the silly season, and we're going to see who comes back, who doesn't come back there, and obviously New Jersey's got things, and we'll touch on that as the offseason commences. But we got the Stanley Cup final starting Saturday. Got a lot of time. And let's see. I've read Carolina could be landing spot for a couple, potentially. I mean, again,
the rumor's there.
The rumor's there, away. But again, they got to pay, and recent history has shown they don't want to pay. So we're gonna see if they pay for top dollar free agents. It's gonna be very interesting. We'll see what happens, but you know what? This is why we love the silly season.
It's put up or shut up time for Brindamore and company.
It's put up or shut up time for a lot of guys on New Jersey too.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. And we'll leave it with that. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in for the Full Press Hockey Weekly Show here on Full Press NHL Twitter, on YouTube, Full Press Coverage, Facebook, Full Press Coverage, Full Press Hockey as well. Get it iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out. We'll be back again next week talking more Stanley Cup final action and the silly season. Check us out, fullpresshockey.com for more. Enjoy your night. Thank you, Chris, for jumping on. Ian behind the scenes. I'm Jim Berenger.